Today, we are meeting with the upper bench musketeers. Let me start by introducing today's host. He is a friend, at least he still takes my phone calls. He is the president of Finlandia Foundation New York Metropolitan Chapter and an instrumental and active chapter leader within Finlandia Foundation community. He is a sauna enthusiast, as we can probably say of many of us. But he has actually taken on an active position to advance proper sauna knowledge. He is the president of the North American Sauna Society, which was established to support authentic sauna bathing here in the United States. Eero Kilpi, or should I say Dr. Kilpi, floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Anne-Marie. And obviously, we, the upper bench, the three of us, want to thank you thoroughly, heartfeltly, giving us this chance to talk about saunas and the quality of sauna in the United States at this point, or North America in general. So yes, I am the president of North American Sauna Society, besides being running the Finlandia Foundation New York chapter. And just very briefly, I'm going to say at this introduction part that we established the North American Sauna Society in 2004. And the idea was that actually our mandate has not changed, but it hasn't gotten too much better either during the years. We were afraid 20 years ago that that people would not understand what the actual authentic sauna bathing is about, and we are a little bit there's a nice boom going on when it comes to sauna in the US, particularly right now. Why not also in Canada? But the idea of sauna bathing, authentic sauna bathing, is still a little blurred. That's how much I'm going to say at this point. Christopher, would you follow?
Yes, my name is Christopher Rice, and I'm not Finnish, but I sometimes go by the nickname Risto. I like that shortening of Christopher. And I have the pleasure of being able to speak regularly with Eero and Sam and Scott Räisänen, who just joined us. And I just enjoy sauna and geeking out with these guys. My family got into sauna about 7 or 8 years ago. And we didn't understand the Finnish expression, or that there was really much to it. So it's been a pretty big adventure for us.
Sam.
Yeah, and I'm Sam Wacha, one of the other hosts of the Upper Bench podcast. Been enjoying sauna for a number of years, and I'm an avid builder, designer, and anything and everything sauna. So when I met up with Risto and Eero and everybody else I've met through these last few years in sauna, it's great talking about just all the differences, but then again, all the similarities that we all share in our love for sauna. So yeah, love it. Love talking about it. So happy to be here. But and then we've brought a special guest with us today. So Christopher, myself, and Eero make up the Upper Bench podcast, and we've asked Scott here to join us today as kind of a little guest panelist. Scott, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hello, sorry I'm late. Yeah, I'm I guess lucky enough to enjoy sauna my entire life, kind of born into the practice. So I feel pretty lucky about that. As far as in addition to that, I have been working in the sauna industry for, I'd say, going on 20 years or so. So been selling and building, and then of course, like I said, using. So happy to be here today, and thanks for having me on, guys. And again, sorry I'm a little late.
Better late than never.
That is totally fine. Your timing is actually perfect. So before I'm going to tell about me a little, but before I do that, I'm just going to ask you guys a question. So why do we actually even want to talk about the quality of sauna. Like, is there something wrong with the quality of sauna in North America? What would you say?
Well, I think that there's a lot of factors, which I'm sure we're going to get into, that qualifies what a good sauna is and what a bad sauna is. And there's just so many varieties out there currently too that, I think a lot of people don't know which way is up. So I do think that there is a problem, because when people don't know which way is up, that's going to be a problem for everybody as a whole. So I think we all need to get together and kind of put our heads together and see what we can do about making sauna a little bit more of a everyday household name.
Yeah, and to kind of answer that question, because kind of the question behind the question is like, why not just let everyone enjoy the sauna they know, or the sauna they know? And of course, that's how it should be. If you enjoy something, no one should stop you from enjoying that. But there are kind of consequences to what our ideas are of sauna in the United States. Maybe not so much for the people here during Sauna Week, but for Americans in general. Before we discovered like the Finnish practice of sauna, I liked it okay. If we were at a hotel, I would want to kind of go in and warm up. That's all I knew. I knew don't put water on the rocks. I knew that much, because the signs always said that. But my wife, Julie, she didn't like it. So I would ask her, hey, do you want to go with me into the sauna? And she would be like, no, I don't really like that. It's uncomfortable. It's, it wasn't until we got into practicing it the Finnish way and discovering how much there was to it that she discovered she loves it. So that's kind of the consequences of if you have a poor expression of it and people don't know any better. There's a lot of people that come to the conclusion that I don't really like that. I don't like to sweat. It's just uncomfortable. I don't like that.
Anything you want to add, Scott, there?
Yeah, I guess for me, I feel, as I said before, pretty fortunate to be able to experience good sauna from the beginning. But I have been exposed to, a number of saunas that I certainly believe could be improved on. And I think some of the, I guess I look at that as perhaps a challenge for us all, is how do we improve that? There are so many ways to do that. And I think it's a tricky thing to navigate. I would also add that it's almost as if somebody new to sauna needs to really experience good sauna to really understand. I think that's perhaps, you could say that for a lot of things, a lot of perhaps foods that people have never tried it. Until you try the real authentic version of something, oftentimes you don't get it.
That's so true. That's so true. So this was only a warm-up. So let's start talking about the quality of sauna. And before we start that, we just want to point out that we were asked to wear our sauna hats. So that's what we are doing right now. Risto is going to put his on. So we're like super fancy right now. Unfortunately, I'm not headed to sauna after this, or right after this, but hopefully soon. Actually, on Thursday, I will. So let me let's start by me. I'm actually going to start this thing almost exactly the same way as year before. So I'm gonna tell about my first experience of sauna in the United States. So it was 1981 when I was 22 years old. I drove across the continent from New York to Los Angeles and up to Portland, Oregon. And I was living at a rental, obviously, for the summer, and we had it was like a townhouse with a central, like a swimming pool, hot tub, and kind of a pool table inside, and there was this thing called sauna. and I had been warned before, so I was not like totally virgin to American sauna at that point. But the thing like shocked me still. It was a there was a wall-to-wall carpet, something that was definitely not a sauna heater, like a radiator there, and obviously already then in the early 80s there was absolutely no water, and that thing, trust me, would have exploded if you threw some water to it. So it didn't even invite to do that. But anyway, so it something had been like totally lost in translation. Something had totally vanished, you know, in the process, because obviously as a Finnish person, I've been in the US for 25 years now, but you know, I've been sauna bathing for more than 60 years, and I thought that people would understand what a sauna is, but that's not the case. And we are still with many people, we are on that road that people don't understand what, and we will try to cover that today. But anyway, so ever since that first feeling, I've experienced a lot of I would say I'm not going to use the word bad, but I'm going to use the word compromised saunas. So something is definitely missed, and something is still missing, and I will talk about that a little more later. But anyway, so hence when we moved to the US a little after, I was asked to join and as one of the founders of the North American Sauna Society, and we've been trying to bring that that Finnish style, not necessarily Finnish per se, but the Finnish style sauna bathing experience to the North American folks. Anyway, so that's how I felt, and that was my incentive to start working on this field. Risto, Christopher, you're going to tell us a little about, you know, your studies, what you've learned about this, about sauna in North America, right?
Yeah, and you guys can jump in, you know, anytime I get something wrong, or, you know. But what I've gathered, what I've learned in my studies, coming from knowing nothing, I didn't even know sauna was from Finland at the beginning, where we were coming from. So it's kind of like there's kind of two stories about sauna in North America. The first one is from Finnish immigrants. So, you know, there was a large immigration of people from Finland in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and they tended to cluster together, as most, you know, a lot of immigrant populations do. They come to a certain area, say, hey, here's work, you know, we have some, you know, people that know your language, people that have, you know, have your food. We have a sauna here, you know, and they would populate, especially in areas that were kind of like Finland, northern Minnesota, Thunder Bay, the Great Lakes area, up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And they brought their sauna culture with them. And that culture kind of stayed in those areas and was passed along to the people that lived near them. And that culture is still alive and well and vibrant. There's some great saunas, you know, on the shores of Superior, up in northern Minnesota. There's, you know, really good expressions of sauna that were nothing like the hotels and gyms I grew up with. And they had not just like the basics, but pretty, you know, it was pretty robust. But then there was a second kind of engagement with the idea of sauna or sauna that happened in the late 50s and the early 60s. And I'm going to share my screen real quick to kind of illustrate that. So can you guys see that?
Not yet. Soon, I'm sure. Yeah, here we go.
So this is this first right here. This is from Google, and it's showing the mentions of the word sauna in books in English. So you can see like the 40s, something starts to happen, and then the late 50s, and then after the 60s, it really starts to take off. And so, you know, by the time you get to the 80s, 90s, 2000, you know, most Americans would understand that word. It's not a foreign word anymore to them. And then this right here is from mentions in newspapers in the United States. And this is, you can see from the 1930s onward. And then the 60s, there's really a large uptick. And so you have lots of advertisements of saunas being sold, that type of thing. And then it starts to kind of taper off. You know, these days newspapers aren't that common, but it's tapering off even by the 80s, it's starting to come down a little bit. So, and then this is before we started thinking of it as sauna in North America, you might have seen the term vapor bath. That was common, or steam bath. They didn't even use the word sauna. And so you go look on Amazon for sauna and what are the best-selling items. They're remarkably similar to this vapor bath. And this is from the late 1800s. I think it is 1896. So it became really like well known in the US after the 60s, but not, and it started out pretty well. There's a gentleman named Cecil Ellis on the East Coast selling saunas, one of the early, and then Viking Sauna on the, Cecil Ellis was on the East Coast and Viking Sauna was on the West Coast. And this is back in the late 40s. And sauna then was a building outside. It was, you're throwing steam, you know, you have the bathing aspect. They even mentioned using vitas in the sauna. But slowly, it didn't take too long. It starts to, in the 60s and 70s, it starts to move indoors, in the basement. You start to lose a lot of the elements. And I think that's partially because there wasn't, the Finnish culture wasn't necessarily guiding that process along. People would just read about it in the newspapers. And it started to become like a status symbol, something you might find at a spa or a way to lose weight. You know, I heard it was healthy. And it just, because it didn't come from the cultural connection from those Finns up in the UP and in Minnesota and in Thunder Bay and all those areas, it wasn't able to really flourish, so that by the time we get into the 2000s, like my family has no clue what sauna is.
Hey, Christopher, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
I think we spoke about this before, and I guess you guys were being kind, but I sort of like blame, my own kind of people, because some or most of Finnish people are known to be not very good marketers. Yeah, and I think that there was kind of a, we didn't stand up back in the day. We just like accepted that the sauna as a phenomenon was changing. And again, I'm sure that we're going to discuss about this a little more soon. But before we do, I'm just going to say that for the audience, that there's this Q&A. Press on the Q&A if there's some questions you want to ask us, because we can't see you. We can't see your hands or anything else of you. So just type on the Q&A and we'll try to answer your questions as we go along. Sorry, Christopher.
Well, and that's about the end of what I have. I think once it hit the newspapers, well, it was good for, like, you look at the graphs and that's pretty exciting and maybe good for sales if you're selling. It kind of was a little bit doomed, I think, at that point. It would have been really difficult to stop the momentum that happened once it became a fad.
That's so very true. And again, coming back to the start of North American Sauna Society, that was the influx of infrared coming to the country. And now what are your feelings about the present day marketplace? how would you say that? Where do we stand right now, sauna wise, Scott and Sam?
Well, I think right now we're seeing a huge influx of new companies hitting the market ever since ever since the pandemic, and things have kind of loosened up a little bit. You're seeing a lot of people understanding the interest in sauna is rising, and people are trying to take advantage of that. And if they're doing so without being mindful, it can grossly erode the quality of product being out there, because when people are working with razor thin margins, are they going to worry about proper ventilation, or are they going to worry about how tall the sauna is, or where the bench placement is? They just want it to look like an advertisement on something that someone's going to sell, and that's unfortunate. So I think there are still some players in the space that are doing great things, and there are some big players in the space that could improve.
Yeah, I agree with what Sam said. I would add that it seems that more people that maybe don't have a Finnish background are asking really good questions more recently than ever before. In my period of time of being involved in selling sauna, going back 20 years and moving forward, there was often this confusion when somebody would call and have a conversation about they would use terms like, I want a dry sauna or I want a wet sauna. And it would require clarification what they meant by that. And every person, it could mean different things. Whereas, and also going off of what Sam mentioned of, there were only a few players in the game 20 years ago, and only offering so many sauna heater options. And then fast forward even 10 years and you start to see more players entering the market, more models that maybe had been around in Europe and Finland and other parts of Europe are starting to make their way into the US market, which, certainly, to me proves that the growth is there, the demand is there. But I do also see that, with that comes those that, maybe want to capitalize on just kind of the trend side of it. And we certainly always have room for improvement. Certainly.
What would you, I'm curious from Sam and Scott especially, and then Eero too, you guys hear this more than I do, but what are people's motivations as they're, looking to buy a sauna? Are there a few common motivations?
Yeah, I think right now the health benefit side of that argument is winning. I think a lot of people are hearing that there are positives, whatever those positives may be. They're looking for it and trying to bring it home. So be it muscle pains or fibromyalgia or Alzheimer's or heart attacks, whatever the ailment may be. Right now there are a lot of studies and a lot of advertising out there being done that are making some pretty wild claims. Is there a benefit? Probably. Is it the next cure for everything? Probably not. So I think people are excited. In most parts, they're excited about this new thing that they're going to introduce. They think it's going to bring wellness, and for a lot of them, I think they're right. It is going to bring a quality of life improvement, and it's going to bring some enjoyment, as well as physical and mental benefits. But a lot of people are getting into it with maybe that's not the best way to go about it, but I think going into it with a great positive outlook, saying, hey, this is going to help me, isn't the worst place to start. But I think it can easily get muddied when you're starting from I'm looking to solve a problem. So there's a lot of different ways to solve
Point.
problems.
Yes.
Yeah, I would add and agree with Sam that health and wellness seems to be the number one reason that many people are asking or trending towards sauna. And I think part of that is helped by the studies that have come out in relation to the benefits of sauna, the different benefits that have been outlined in the different studies. But yeah, I would agree to some level that it can be a slippery slope depending on how that side of it is used to market to those that are interested. I certainly don't think it's the only thing or only reason someone should use sauna. But it certainly is a wonderful benefit.
So let's start answering. Well, you've answered already some. You wrote some answers to those questions that we have here, but let's try to answer. Our dear friend Walker Angel asks us that what do we get wrong, and I try to start by answering that this is kind of, we go circles around the thing that many people do, compromises when they buy their first sauna, maybe their second sauna, even third sauna, I don't know. But like, how do they know that they're making compromises? Because it's an unfair comparison. I just checked, and we are not. I'm bringing obviously Finland a lot to this discussion, but this is not a Finnish phenomenon. Finnish people didn't invent sauna. We just kept doing that way longer than other people did, and then other people started coming along and started doing it also. But so back home in that home country, we have 160,000 lakes. If you count all the ponds also in the equation. So it's very easy to have a very nice sauna by a lake back home. And if you build yourself, say, an infrared room to your bedroom, obviously the experience is a little different than a sauna by a lake and with a fire pit and whatnot, and birds singing, and weather sometimes even back home is beautiful. But anyway, so the point is, and I want to hear your comments on this, that sauna bathing, first of all, it's a process. And I say this every time. It's hot, cold, rest, hydrate, repeat. So hot, cold, rest, hydrate, repeat. That's the sauna bathing process. And it has not changed. Most of the work I do is pro bono when it comes to North American Sauna Society. If I would get $1 every time I talk to a person who says that he read this article about or heard about this article about health benefits, and now he or she is gonna get a sauna where he or she is gonna stay 20 minutes inside the hot room once and done, for 4 times a week. So there's a misunderstanding already at the first phase. And then if we want to get a little closer, a little deeper, we're not going to talk about the sauna bathing process, but we are talking about but what's happening inside the hot room. In the hot room, it's and I spoke with our friend Glenn Auerbach about this. It's heat, steam, and ventilation. Heat, steam, and ventilation make the sauna bathing experience inside the hot room. And we know about the steam part, which is also called the löyly. It's non-existent in many parts of particularly in the US.
What other questions do we have here? I'm seeing a lot of good questions actually, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time to people out there where we may not get to all of them, But there are some great questions being posed here. One that I wanted to just kind of take a shot at here is one by Mark. How much of the compromise do you think is related to societal norms? Kind of the example here he's giving is, maybe America is a little bit more reserved with, public nudity, family bathing, things like that. And then he brings up a question about, hotels and insurance fears, about throwing water on the rocks. So I think he brings up two really good points. America has that kind of stigma of being, kind of the reserved. We're glad to put somebody with a gun in their hand on a billboard, but God forbid if somebody doesn't, show a little skin. So it's a little bit wishy-washy there, but I think it does bring up a good point, because if let's say America was 100% fine with nudity and no giggling, snarking, and it was just an everyday thing, would sauna be more more accepted? I don't know. It would be easier. You're taking away one of the maybe restrictive pieces that people may fear, but you're not going to find a sauna, a public sauna that requires nudity in America either, unless you're at maybe like a nudist camp or something like that. So this fear that we have that we're going to get naked in front of somebody is not around the sauna. That's around the individual. So, and what you do in your own house with your own personal sauna is between you and the people in it. But I do like that he brings up the hotel insurance fear, because anyone who's traveled and seen a public sauna has probably seen the little sign that says "Don't throw water on the rocks," and I think a lot of that have to do with the concerns of being in close proximity to a pool. Nobody wants to put chlorinated water on a sauna rock. There's your liability concerns all day long. But I do see, there's, and that kind of adds to the stigma and adds to the perpetuation of, well, you don't put water on sauna rocks. This is a dry sauna. So people are kind of, they don't know any better because no one told them that, well, we don't want chlorine gas in our sauna. It's not that we don't want steam in our sauna.
Well, and I think most hotel and gym owners are also probably clueless themselves. They're probably not much more, much better informed than we were going into that. They probably, who knows what they think, but it's probably not much different than the standard American.
Right. Which is very little.
I would add on that kind of that realm of the kind of classic or not very enjoyable hotel sauna in North America. I'm sure many have experienced, but it's almost as if at some point, either a group of people or hotels took it upon themselves, hotel owners took it upon themselves to create, kind of their own rules, whether it was a combination of how do we restrict or make this sauna last longer. Let's tell them they can't pour water on the rocks. I'm sure there's many different reasons, or some just actually thinking that pouring water on this electric stove is going to be dangerous. And then, on top of that, there are a lot of kind of, I'm trying to think of the best word, kind of these different perhaps building codes and health, Department of Health rules, guidelines that sometimes get in the way and make it challenging to do it, to do sauna as we believe it should be done, or there's more challenges to get it done. A number of at least publicly, or if we kind of throw hotels and gyms into that realm, many of them have to follow building codes and rules that sometimes make it very challenging to make a good sauna, be that handicap accessibility, factoring that into play. And then sometimes there's just some very strange building codes that maybe come up. It can be very specific to, I know there's some interesting ones just in the city of New York that actually mention words of sauna that are somewhat challenging. And there's certainly others that I've seen, I believe in the International Building Code that reference basically portray that this is the only way that you can vent a sauna, which kind of goes above and beyond what many longtime sauna heater manufacturers put in their installation requirements. So I think there's a lot of improvement that can be done in that regard. I think it's very challenging to kind of try to clarify and go as a group. I myself don't know the first step to sort of combat different building codes, but I think that is an area that maybe we can try to figure out how to navigate, whether that's coming up with sort of these guides. I forget what they're called, but Eero maybe can clarify. Like in Finland, they have these sort of specific guidelines for sauna. If somehow that in itself can be sort of brought to America or North America and implemented, I think that would be a tall task, but that's sort of what is in my mind.
And even I know that this goes to a lot of people, this goes too deep, but even the UL 875 code, it was not designed by people who really understand sauna bathing, and there are people like our Risto, i.e. Christopher here, who's been involved with trying to change that, and then one day it will change. I'm just going to answer just one question here. Nancy's asking, when I use the word sauna bathing, am I talking about the actual washing in the sauna? The answer is no. I don't have a better word for it, but the sauna bathing process, it includes, and I did not mention this, but you take a shower, you're supposed to take a shower first before you start sauna bathing, or it depends, it's good manners. And when it comes to that, what Sam was talking about, chlorine, the chlorine in a public sauna is exactly the same reason why back home in Finland, many saunas actually ask you to go into the hot room naked, so that you don't bring that chlorine in your swim trunks inside the sauna.
Well, and this might be one difference between Finland and the US. It's my understanding that the Finnish sauna practice in the US is maybe a little bit older of a practice, because people immigrated and didn't necessarily change in the same way they did in Finland. So I think still up in the UP, the washroom and the hot room, where it's more common for people to wash in the hot room. That's
okay. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I always tell people, especially if they're building an outdoor sauna and they maybe haven't thought of it, I say you should maybe think about putting in a drain. Because honestly, every sauna I've been in that you could literally put a bucket of water over your head right in the sauna and not have to worry about it has been a fun time.
Carter here is asking about, from a European standpoint, there are quite a few technical constraints and different regulation concerning security issues, as example that what we have in Europe. And he's asking about the different regulation and constraints are hindering, if the constraints are hindering the development of good load experience in North America. Absolutely. You want to highlight that a little more?
Yeah, I mean, even for those that don't know, one of the biggest differences between sauna in the Europe and sauna here in North America is the temperature is actually capped much lower in the US than in Europe, approximately by almost 40 degrees. I believe the standard in Europe is right around 230 for a maximum temperature, where in the US it's in the low 190s. So if you're someone who is accustomed to saunaing, in 200 Fahrenheit plus, you're going to be disappointed when you come to the US.
Well, and that's, that's a really interesting, 194 maximum. It's depending on like, where is your sensor?
Yeah.
Your bench may be way below that. So like, again, 194 maximum. And I was super curious about that when I learned that, because it's such a specific number. It's like, why 194? Which
Yeah.
194 translates to 90 Celsius, which I've learned is like a temperature, like a safety temperature for certain wiring, if it doesn't have extra insulation. So my guess is that it came from some sort of component,
Electrical code.
well, some sort of, component, which you can just use different wiring or better components to raise that temperature.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, and I mean, and I know some of the different tests and things like that that the manufacturers have to go through in the US, to kind of jump through some hoops. And some of those tests are pretty rigorous, and compared to European standards, it's not that European sauna heaters are unsafe. It's just that I think the US went a little bit far with saying what is safe in the US.
Now, our dear friend Rob asks a very good question. Can we talk about the issue of educating general contractors who typically have never taken sauna and make mistakes and do shoddy work because they don't understand what they are building? For example, the manuals are not written in a way that explains sauna to an American contractor. They ignore the most basic instructions, like the venting details. I guess this is a question for Sam and Scott.
Scott, I'm going to let you take a swing at this one, because I've already been on the phone with contractors all day explaining this.
Yeah. I would say first and foremost, it seems to be that very few contractors like to read manuals to begin with. That in itself, I think, has its own challenges. But I certainly believe the manufacturers could make improvements. Sometimes I think they may have their hands tied in terms of the manual has to have certain language in it, and they maybe can't stray from certain things. But I'm trying to remember the other part of his question here. Bear with me.
Can you still see it? I might have.
Yeah, I had to flip over here. Sorry about that. I lost my train of thought here. So anything to add, Sam? Maybe it'll come back to me here, but I apologize.
No worries. From my experiences, I've talked to a lot of custom home builders, a lot of general contractors, a lot of remodelers, plumbers, things like that. Every single one of those guys had never been in a sauna and was asking me questions that I thought, might be common sense. But again, when you've never had any experience with something, there's no common sense, there. So, as far as, insulating the walls and, do we need drywall? Do we need this, prepping the space? Or, if people are building interiors, but when people are dead set on something, they will often just kind of move forward. When I try to talk about venting, or, creating that circulation of air in a home sauna, sometimes I have to kind of educate users on why that's needed and why that's good. But, again, too, they think, well, if the vent is, here, isn't steam just going to be pouring out of that vent into my room if, it's an interior? And then trying to kind of talk through, the humidity levels and things like that. But as far as contractors, I think what we as an industry need to do is a better job of creating some of those norms, and then sharing those norms with, the industries that we overlap with. You can go to any expo or trade show in almost any industry and get some kind of a certification in it. Nowadays, I mean, you can go to a national yarn convention and be a certified yarn weaver in, 2 straight weeks, whatever it is, it's out there. And I think sauna, it's time for sauna to get to that level. And I think with the North American Sauna Society's help, we're building a path to that, where if there are resources available for these contractors, and getting the good word out there, hopefully these things will be a thing of the past and we can laugh about it.
Yeah, we would benefit like from some, education has been mentioned several times in the Q&A, and rightly so. Not just for the end user, but for contractors, for architects, for gym owners, for hotels, some sort of official resource that's informative, that then, like, it's not just me, random person, saying to the gym owner, your heater was meant to take water, you're doing a disservice to your clients, but something more artfully worded and more detailed would be beneficial, for those different different people.
Yeah, and I'll add too, my experience was pretty heavy on the commercial side for some time. And a lot of times, and maybe this isn't where Rob was going with his question, but a lot of times the contractors, they're just trying to check the box. Okay, the sauna's done, and they're only going to meet the minimum requirements. So perhaps, it's a combination of, leaning more on the manufacturers with better details, and also maybe leaning heavily on the architects to detail and specify more precisely what exactly they're looking for the, whether it be the intricacies of the ventilation, and the other parameters. Oftentimes when you look at a plan for say a big commercial project, it's just the square room. They really don't even identify where the benches are, and I would say that oftentimes that contractor, he's just checking the box to say that he got that part of the project, which, is such a small piece to a huge puzzle. And they're just trying to check the box to get on to the next thing, is my guess.
I have a theory on that. Obviously we're talking about the same thing. It's that the real authentic sauna is not really understood for the most part, for the most people. And when you put the say a steam bath, infrared room, a hot tub, and a sauna on the same level, then you have like 4 different ways of what's the right word, thermotherapy. But now the idea that we have here, which we are trying to prove, which is so difficult, is that sauna, an authentic sauna, can give so much more than these other alternatives. And so in a way we've been pushing the sauna down. And now let's answer, and we have to try to we might be able to go a little over time, but let's try to answer these questions now, if that's okay with you guys. So Vlad is asking, on the topic of wellness, how do you think we can combat a resurgence of the cheap sauna trends of the 80s, when social media and marketing made it even easier to get away with it?
I get this question quite a bit, and it's something that I definitely discuss and think about quite often. This is something where the good saunas of the world need to rise up, and they need to show themselves. We need to not be bashful about traditional sauna, and we need to share those experiences with others as well, and share them on social media. So many people over the last couple of years, their first interaction with sauna was on social media, and it was probably something that was plug into a wall, and nobody wants that. So it's going to be up to us as the stewards of good sauna to continue to share the messaging with everyone we can, and and speak with our wallets. It is tough because the people who are buying don't know any better, and it's going to be our job to educate them so we can hopefully save them a little bit of money down the road.
Well, and it's long-term thinking. As a business, you might be able to sell, something that's called a sauna for $2,000. You might be able to sell tons of those versus something that's more expensive. But long-term building, it's not a solid foundation. Eventually what you're selling is going to end up as a closet or on Craigslist, but if you sell something really good, that thing is eventually going to sell to the friends and neighbor of the person you sold it to, if they understand the whole sauna process, and that you ask them, like, what kind of sausage do you eat as part of your sauna experience? They're not looking at you like you're asking a crazy question.
Yeah, because we need to get to a point where it's the sauna is commonplace, and a lot of these issues do clear themselves up. But if we don't kind of put some guardrails around it, it can get off the track real fast. So I think us doing our jobs to introduce people and be good stewards, and it's okay to interact with stuff that you see out there online too. Just make sure that you're being civil and respectful and polite, and you can disagree. You can definitely disagree with anything you've heard today. So but don't be silent either. If you don't vote, you can't complain about who won.
I want to add what my friend Arno Minkkinen was asking there about, or suggesting that there would be a shower room, a picture of a Finnish lakeside. And I just want to say that one part of business that is driving where we are going are the spas, and there will be, and there are many great spas in the works in North America, and they will have fantastic scenery, so to speak, and at the court, at least as far as I know, somewhere there is a real Finnish style sauna always. So they do have all the what I was mentioning before, the hot tubs and the infrared rooms and the whatnot, but at least there's supposed to be somewhere the real deal that you can enjoy also. And then our dear Frank, also my good friend Frank Dawson is asking, I would be interested in your ideas on frequency and procedure to clean and rejuvenate sauna, woodwork, benches and backen. And before I give this chance for you two guys who actually know what the answer is, that it's all boils down to me to a drain. So I want to have a drain, and I'm going to spray the hose the room, and I'm almost done. And then maybe once a month clean it, rub it a little better. And obviously if it's a commercial sauna, public sauna, then it's a different procedure, but that's how I would do it.
Yeah, I tell people, a light soapy mixture, a few drops of Dawn dish soap in a bucket of water with a bristle brush, and go to town, and then take some clean water over that and wipe it down again. You don't want any soap residue or anything like that on your benches, but the less chemicals you can introduce to the hot room, the better. And prevention is always going to be the best case. So sit on a towel or sit on some kind of barrier between you and the wood to preserve the life of that wood.
There's a question here that says, what is your opinion of infrared sauna?
And asking us generally. Yeah,
I'd like to hear Scott's response.
Yeah, I don't think it's a sauna, number one. But I think it's I think you have to talk about it to some degree, because there's plenty of people that believe that is a sauna, or believe that it is better than a sauna. I think that's personal preference, what you think is better. Obviously the one you're going to use the most is perhaps better. But it's certainly many or most seem to be built to sort of look like a sauna, wood lined, but it's completely dry and very low temperature. So, you know, certainly not a sauna in my book.
Yeah.
It's different. Yeah, it's totally different. And you know, some people say that I hate infrared rooms. I don't hate them, but it's not my cup of tea. And like Scott says, it's a personal preference. And then I'm glad that Mark posed a question. He's asking, are there any programs that provide some sort of an ambassador program, folks that teach, demonstrate, instruct those that don't know how to do sauna right? So the North American Sauna Society is trying, at the trying phase. We just had our board meeting on Friday. We are trying to build up a totally volunteer-based ambassadorship program around the United States and Canada. And it either is going to fly or it won't. But we're trying to do that because there are so many people who are so adamant about and eager to put out the good word. So there are many people like us who wanna go out there but like Sam is repeating here, telling us that we have to do it in a constructive way. You know, it's just like yes. Okay, I don't think that we have time to answer all these questions. They keep coming here.
This has been great. I mean, there's a lot of great discussion here. You know, some of these comments are great. You know, I really am just thrilled that, you know, we're all together here talking about sauna and being passionate about it. I think if we just continue this passion forward and continue meeting like this, you know, by the time we get the 50th reunion of Sauna Week, hopefully we can laugh at these old videos with our dumb hats. But I love mine, Slava Ukraini, love it. So.
Well, I think that we can, if you have time, we can go through a couple of other questions, but I just want to say that, first of all, I love this panel. First of all, Eero, you and I are the oldies of this panel or this group. And I think it's wonderful to see the next generation picking up on this topic. I think that's huge for us. And when we talk about the infrared sauna, let's not mention the word sauna in that context. I think in infrared room and our traditional sauna, they have a very different function, if you ask me. I don't know if I'm totally off the topic, but that's really how I feel about it. And then when you see signs for bad sauna, the bad doesn't mean bad, it means bad. It's in some foreign language. So I just saw Kat posted something on our sauna channel, and it said bad sauna, and I'm like, this doesn't mean bad sauna, it means bad.
Bad stuga. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
But us here in North America didn't know the difference, so.
Yeah, exactly. And if you want to find something funny about American sauna, last year Ismo did a skit on sauna. He was sitting there and telling all about the carpeted floors in his apartment building sauna. I think that was really funny. So you can go and take a look at that.
Kimo has a question here. He says, are you familiar with the law of Lulu? And he was wondering about the 7-foot height barrier that's used in most cases in the US. And he mentions a 7-foot threshold for commercial saunas. So we have a few things there. The law of Lulu, I believe, is that you want to be up in the lolu, in the steam, which is up by the ceiling. And so you want to be up towards the top and then with your feet above the rocks on the stove. And the 7-foot barrier for building, I think that's a convention, a pretty common convention in North America. I don't know where it came from. It's just what you find if you Google it. And people hold to that, dearly, but a sauna doesn't have to be 7 foot. It can be taller. Our family, we built a 10-foot tall sauna in our hot room. And then, perhaps Sam and Scott can answer the 7-foot height for a commercial sauna. Is there a limit on that?
Yeah, I would guess, I'm only guessing that that 7-foot realm is somewhat tied to UL. UL doesn't, there is a maximum which is not 7 feet, but 7 feet's kind of in the middle of what is often the minimum and the maximum for sauna heaters that are safety listed to UL 875, 8 feet being the maximum. And then the minimum size, it's somewhere in the 6 foot to 6.5, depending on the heater model. So I would guess a lot of that is tied to some of the interesting safety listing requirements, wherever those came from. I can only guess, but I'm guessing a lot of it is that 7-foot height is tied to that to some degree.
And I also think it's loosely tied to shipping and availability of goods. Your standard framing 2x4 is 96 inches, which is 8 feet. So it's a heck of a lot easier to cut the ends off of it and have a 7-foot board rather than pay a 30 to 40% markup for a board that's only 2 feet longer. And shipping things that are over 8 feet long or 8 feet wide, the costs go up dramatically.
Well, and when sauna moved into the basement, basements tend to have lower ceilings. So if you were a sauna manufacturer, you probably don't want to build a bunch of different sizes. So this is part of where the compromise maybe came in. As soon as it came indoors, and then now that you're selling a kit, they're probably shorter kits so that it can fit in a basement as well.
Exactly.
Eero, I guess I'd be curious if you have anything to add from more of the European side. Is there, maybe not sauna related, but is there sort of a standard height for rooms in a typical Finnish home? Not related to sauna, but that would maybe be another area.
They used to be higher. They used to be taller back in the day, but now they're making them rooms are not that tall anymore. But when it comes to sauna, I don't actually know. I believe they tend to be higher than the 7 feet saunas, the kind of standard sauna back home. The problem is that we were talking about the law of Löyly and that stuff. The problem is that even back home, I think because they try to serve the international clientele, the benches happen to be sometimes way too low, even in Finland. And it's unbelievable, but that we're sort of like taking a step back, even though we should go forward with that sauna bathing experience. Go ahead.
Isn't it a little bit about the height of where the stove is and where the rocks are?
Yeah,
The steam is coming, so that especially
Yeah.
when you're sitting on a bench, your toes should never be cold.
Yes, exactly. As Christopher was saying, your feet are supposed to be on the same level where the rocks are.
Yeah. And then on the top bench, you need some sort of a height in terms of when you are sitting there. So I think that's one of the height factors.
Yeah, and I usually recommend to people to go from the ceiling down instead of the floor up. If you go from the floor up, you might end up at 7 foot. But if you throw that out, you might end up building a 10-foot tall sauna. So, and I highly recommend that.
I would also add perhaps ADA requirements come into play as well when you factor in a lower bench is required to meet ADA requirements if a sauna needs that, and often facilities err on the side that they're not sure, so they just provide it, and that can kind of keep that ceiling height down because they have oftentimes more lower benching, and or if you factor in, I've been in a number of saunas in Finland where, there's many tiers of benching to ensure that you are higher up, it becomes or can become difficult in North America if you need to follow or meet certain ADA requirements with a turning radius. So all of a sudden that really impacts how many levels of benching you can have based on the space provided. So I would guess that too comes into play, keeping that ceiling height lower for those that maybe aren't able to get to higher benches.
Well, and also, even if you don't have the ADA, if you shrink the sauna room, there's not much room to get up.
Correct.
If you have a 5x5, that's
Yep.
a lot different than a big cabin outside. So
Yep.
I frequently have to talk to people about increasing the size of their sauna because people don't realize what it actually takes to move around and move and climb up. If you're constrained on a 3x3 box, yes, you can sit inside of a 3x3 box, but are you comfortable? And what are you banging into when you're moving around? More room, the better. You can always, add another layer of bench or something like that. But if you don't have the room for it, you're stuck with what you got.
It's up to Anne-Marie, but I'm just going to answer one question and then you'll decide whether we're going to go on or not. But there's this Petri who's asking or saying, I believe these new electric heaters, pillar heaters with high volume rocks, the most common temperature is around 150 to 180. Maybe wood-fired heaters, the temperature is higher. Do people in North America use too little water in their saunas? And I'm coming back to what I said before. Inside the sauna room we have the heat, we have the steam, and we have the ventilation, and the steam in this case means the löyly, what we've been saying. So the answer is absolutely yes. People don't use enough water inside their saunas, but that's kind of a smaller problem that we are facing, but that is a challenge.
Mm-hmm. And to speak about the pillar heaters, I'm a big fan of some of the new heaters that are coming out to market with a lot more rock mass. I think that is really improving, that steam generation and allowing kind of a more ambient air temperature in a sauna. I'm a kind of a fan of the exposed rocks. Me personally, I use a wood burning stove, but even on my wood stack, I've started to kind of creep the sauna rocks up, the stovepipe. More rocks, the better. I would say if you've got room for more rocks, they're always welcome, because more heated rock mass, more steam, more surface area, I think is just going to add to the experience overall.
yeah, and the more that I've gotten into sauna, the more I find myself wanting more steam. And I've seen that also for friends and family. They start out and they're like, oh, I don't like as much steam as you, but now I sauna with them and it's like, whoa, like.
Mm-hmm.
We have 7 more questions in the queue. Let's not add any more questions. Let's go through those, and just for everybody's so that you're aware, we will be posting this presentation and this discussion in our YouTube channel after the sauna week, so you will find it there, and as well as we will put everybody's contact information if they allow. So that people can connect with you, at least for the North American Sauna Society for sure. But just let's go through what we have here, and then we close. We have a good number of people here still, so nobody's bored. Let's put it that way.
Great.
So let's go.
I wanted to just pop in. I like Nate's question. He talks a little bit about, compromising in the topics that we've discussed today, but later on in his question, he asks, Risto, you talked about from 1800s until now. What do you think the most significant events have been in the last recent history that have made sauna more familiar to Americans and maybe more familiar to the world?
Yeah, I mean, the Olympics, but again, it's really difficult for that to stick. I think you really it's got to be more one-on-one. You introduce someone, and it even takes more than one time. You know, when we introduce someone to sauna, we invite them over a few times, and it takes a while for them to really get that to where they get their own sauna.
Yeah. And I think we talked a little bit about the big influx, you know, after World War II. You know, I would point to that as being something in the North American history that really increased our influence in all things European. You know, as far as it, you know, most recent generations, but now, you know, it'd be hard to say what was the biggest thing, you know, what came first, the chicken or the egg. I think that's like asking what came first, the fin or the sauna.
Mhm. Yeah, good point. Good point. Okay, so we go forward. Arno is suggesting because we actually don't have a magazine that could promote authentic sauna experiences, but he wants that to be called Sauna Rocks, and that's a deal. It's going to be, when it comes, it's going to be called the Sauna Rocks.
There is a magazine called Hammam, and I think even though Hammam's not a sauna, I think they do cover a lot of sauna content.
Oh, okay.
Well,
haven't
that's
read
the
it.
best sauna.
I guess I would. It's not conducive to most of the American audience, but there is a sauna magazine put out by the Finnish Sauna Society. It's primarily, I believe, all in Finnish, but it would be wonderful to either get an English version, or maybe North American Sauna Society can start their own.
There we go.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah.
The Upper Bench periodical.
Yes, well, there you go. That is the answer. Okay, and there's a question for Scott. Any experience in taking a prefab sauna and install and modify it to a proper sauna experience?
I've assembled a number from a variety of brands. I have ideas. I've not made extensive modifications, other than, you know, played a little bit around with mechanical venting, but you know, it gets a little bit tricky. Oftentimes the vent inlet and outlet are pre-designated, thus the prefab, so you're kind of stuck with what's there. But you know, I would guess in my own mind, you could, you know, play around with different sort of ductwork apparatuses and adding mechanical venting, and depending on the size, it maybe wouldn't take much, at least to experiment with some of the mechanical venting to bring that heat level a little bit lower into the room.
Excellent. And then we have only a couple of here anymore. So Walker says, so the feet should be higher. Okay, we take that, and Walker is a specialist. We all know that, or some of us do know that he knows a lot about sauna technicalities. And then Kath is asking, our sauna was built about 20 years ago, and the benches seem to have gotten taller in that time. Hard to get onto. Is this common?
That is about getting old.
I was going to say, are you sure that you didn't get shorter?
So that's where we need to start building a sauna where and I've actually used a sauna like this before, but where you put the stove down. There's a gentleman in New York who built a sauna where the stove, the rocks are at the level of the floor.
Yep.
So that's, you know, more difficult to build, but it makes it a lot easier. You know, you don't have to climb up so high.
Yeah. Okay, I think we've covered now the questions, and there's there's also the sauna.fi, sauna lehti, which means sauna magazine. There's a link to their magazines. But anyway, so on my behalf, or actually I will thank once again Anne-Marie. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. We keep doing the Upper Bench podcasts, and we actually have a couple of lined up. And how many have we done so far, gentlemen?
Six or seven.
6 or 7, and we are getting we have some hundreds of people who are already in, and we hope to have thousands more in the future. So on my behalf, thank you so much.
Well, that's a good final thought. My comment at the end is like how to keep the sauna clean. Take a shower before you go and use the towels on top of the benches. Takes you a long way. So just a practical manner.
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
Anyways, thank you guys. Any other final thoughts, final pitch that you want to take?
No, just thanks for having me. And thanks for doing Sauna Week.
Yes, thank you very
Yes.
much, all that attended. It's a pleasure being here. Feel free to reach out to us on any of our social media channels. We'd love to connect with you and keep the conversation going.
Yep. Kiitos.
Ole hyvä.